Take it away, Bo.
Great. So welcome, everyone. My name is Bo Chung, Senior Projects Analyst with the Strategic Growth Council Transformative Climate Communities Program. Thank you all for taking the time to come and attend this online version of the workshop on our upcoming round 5 guidelines. I'd like to invite everyone just to introduce themselves in the chat. I see some of you have already renamed yourself due to some technical issues. Everyone's coming in as Jess Isan, who is our newest member of our team. So welcome aboard, Jess, and welcome everyone to this presentation. So the goal of this workshop is just to present the updates to the draft round 5 guidelines. We will have staff answering any burning questions in the chat, and we are going to have the Q&A towards the end of the workshop. So feel free to also drop questions in the chat. They will be monitored. And then what you see here is the agenda. This is like the run of show in terms of how we're going to be going over the round 5 draft guidelines. So Jerry, I'll pass it to you.
Great. Thank you, Bo. And thank you all again for joining us. We're going to do a quick walk through some of these slides that'll give the background on TCC for those that are unfamiliar with the program. But really the goal here is to get feedback from you, all of y'all, for the draft changes for round 5. Jess we'll introduce the background, and then towards the latter part of the program, Jess will walk us through some of the more substantial changes. Those will be presented as a group in slides here. We will then break out, try to do an interactive group activity where we can discuss and receive feedback from you all in relation to application requirements, program policy priorities, and then some project and strategies draft proposals that are included in the round 5 draft. Also, just quickly want to highlight that the focus again will for today's session is gathering feedback from the public on the proposed changes to round 5. So we won't go into too much detail regarding the program framework or application materials. We can save this for future workshops, TBD, and then also encouraging you all through application TA workshops that are coming up at the beginning of next year to have really more in the weeds conversations. Again, these are all forthcoming, but we encourage you to sign up to our mailing list to stay in the know. With that said, what is TCC? So TCC was created in 2016 by state legislation, and TCC funds community-driven proposals and is structured to provide existing residents and stakeholders with the tools and resources to drive change. TCC makes significant investments to support the deployment of multiple integrated climate strategies and projects carried out through strong partnerships at the local level and with the state. To date, the program has invested $329 million through 4 rounds of funding. SGC administers the Transformative Climate Communities in partnership with the Department of Conservation. And we have, as you saw, welcome Brendan Pipkin from the Department of Conservation on this call with us. So yeah, let's do just a quick overview of past, including the most recent round 4 grantees for implementation grants. So here we have an image of where we've had implementation grants across the state, beginning in round 1 all the way through round 4. And then we also have a map with an image of the planning grants, which we'll discuss a little bit in more detail across the state as well. Again, rounds 1 through 4. Some of the updates from round 4, which we'll talk about, is the expansion of eligible applicants to include California Native American tribes. And you can see the extent of the work. We're now with the Karuk and Wyatt tribes, the Hoopa Valley tribes, excited about the work, Chicken Ranch Rancheria for round 4. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about round 4. Let's go into just the quick timeline and funding availability for round 5, just as a background. So for round 5, the funding, round 5 has an allocation of $163.2 million in TCC funds for fiscal year 2022-23. The draft round 5 guidelines proposes funding for up to 4 implementation grants of up to $35 million each. New to this round, and we will discuss in depth further in the presentation, are the project development grants with multiple awards for up to $7 million each. And then lastly, we have planning grants at $1.2 million allocated for this round, which breaks down to 4 awards at $300,000 each. So the timeline, let me close our notes here. The timeline there, we see a breakdown of the round 5 application and award cycle timeline. The guidelines were out for public comment in November 21st. So we have a month of public comment. It will close the 21st of this month. We hope to get comments today from you all, and also encourage you to email any comments as you go through these guidelines. If you hear anything today, so today's not the last day. We will also have 3 subsequent public in-person workshops taking place within the next couple of weeks to also try to gather some more feedback from the public. So after public comment ends in December, the program aims to adopt the final guidelines in January and then release the NOFA in February with a 4-month application window, as we've seen in previous cycle feedback as an appropriate time to apply. So we have a list of who is eligible to apply to TCC on this slide. For those familiar with the program, these are the same groups and entities as in previous rounds. Just want to clarify that in the 2 definitions have been expanded upon from round 4 are that local governments or local public agencies include tribal governments and housing authorities now as applicant eligibilities eligible, and then California Native American tribes under the California Native American Heritage Commission are eligible to apply as lead applicants as well. Now, the caveat here is that a local government or public agency must be the lead or co-applicant, if not the lead, in an application. Okay, project area requirements. Something very specific to TCC are that they are defined by project areas are defined for implementation grants specifically, defined by a project area of up to 5 square miles. These demographics include, as you can see on this list, disadvantaged communities as defined by Calenvirus Screen, AB 1550 communities, and then California Native American tribes as mentioned, and then disadvantaged unincorporated communities. We encourage you all to see, and we'll drop this in the chat in a bit, the TCC mapping tool, which is also available on our website, and encourage you to run the tool to try to best understand the eligibility of a potential project that you may be thinking about. We will do that in a second. Yeah, so now with that quick synopsis, I will pass it to Bo to give a little bit more background on the grants available for funding. Bo?
Great. Thank you so much, Jerry. I am now just going to give a very high-level overview of our grant programs. The first one I'll be going over is the implementation grants, followed by the planning grants, and then a very new and exciting project development grant that is going to be new for round 5. Next slide, please. So in this slide, you'll see just what the framework is for the implementation grant. This flowchart shows how we would like the applicants to develop a shared vision statement describing how the proposal will achieve all 3 program objectives, which is to reduce greenhouse gas, promote public health and environmental benefits, and also economic opportunity and shared prosperity. And within the proposal, applicants will then choose at least 3 strategies to implement the vision statement, then develop projects based on the eligible elements allowed under each strategy. And on to the lower right corner, you see the transformative elements. These are to be integrated into the entire proposal. For example, the community engagement will be used to develop proposals for each project. Workforce development will ensure that projects will include training and job creation, and climate adaptation and resiliency should be factored into any project or program design. Next slide, please. So to what our director referred to as our secret sauce, part of our secret sauce is that TCC really highlights the use of a collaborative stakeholder structure. This is to ensure deep and meaningful community engagement throughout the process, from the planning and application phase up through the implementation phase of the project. So you see on the left, we would like to encourage a structure in which all different types of folks from the demographics of the project area are included within the decision-making process, and the California Strategic Growth Council, us, will be communicating with the lead grantee. Next slide, please. In addition to the collaborative stakeholder structure, we also include these 6 transformative elements. This is how we move from a collection of projects within a project area into a transformative type of project that will hopefully change the relationship between disadvantaged, marginalized communities and local governments. I will be going over in more detail around number 1, 2, and 3. Community engagement, the workforce development, economic opportunities, and displacement avoidance to really highlight some of the key components of the TCC program and how we seek to make transformational change. So the first one is the community engagement component. So applicants must develop a community engagement plan with these 2 main sections. And, one of the things we've heard from our previous grantees is that they wanted to have some of the community engagement funding go towards expanded eligible costs to food, childcare, transportation, and compensation so that we could have greater access to folks to participate in the community engagement transformative plan. Next slide, please. The second component is the workforce development and the economic opportunities transformative plan. So applicants must develop a workforce development economic opportunities plan with 2 major components. So one that develops workforce development along with educational training programs. The second component is to connect how TCC investments will create high quality jobs for a carbon constrained future. So we want to ensure that the economic and the workforce opportunities that come along with this state investment will go towards either carbon neutral or a reduced carbon type of employment. One example of that is, for instance, the increase of public health professions, either in nursing or care type of facilities. So next slide, please. The third transformation plan that I'd like to go over is the displacement avoidance plan. So applicants must develop a displacement avoidance plan with these 4 major short and long-term components. So describing the displacement vulnerability for residents and small businesses, describing what the current policies, plans, and ordinances are, identifying additional policies and programs to be pursued, and provide a relocation plan pursuant to California relocation law if necessary for activities with potential for displacement. So all of these 3 transformational plans are covered in much deeper detail within our guidelines. Next slide, please. So alongside the transformational plans, we want to highlight some of the governor's office's priorities, California state priorities. These 4 icons represent 4 different priorities we want to highlight and pursue within the TCC program. The one on the far left is the high-speed rail. Just want to make sure that, Jerry, we have, did a slide go away? Oh, no, there you go. Thanks. Is just a connectivity to the high-speed rail line and to ensure that our infrastructure investment in high-speed rail will also be positively impacted by TCC. The second symbol highlights infrastructure. So we want to ensure that TCC investment will provide long-term benefits to the community and expand on existing or planned access to basic water and wastewater infrastructure, as well as clean and affordable transit connectivity. The third symbol is housing. As you all know, California is in a housing crisis, and we want to provide incentive for jurisdictions that are facilitating sustainable housing production, and we will give maximum points possible for designated pro-housing jurisdictions. And the last one is, of course, pollution prevention and mitigation. So we want to provide incentives for applicants that are preventing future and mitigating existing sources of pollution to rectify environmental justice issues. So examples of this such as enforcement programs, ensuring compliance with point source emission limits, and land use restrictions related to separating polluting land uses from sensitive receptors. So in some of the CalEnviro screen indicated neighborhoods where they're already experiencing high environmental pollution burdens. Next slide, please. So throughout the process of the TCC application, there is technical assistance that's provided. It is available for all applicants during the application phase, during the implementation phase, as well as the evaluation portion of the grant. Next slide, please. This is a sample flow chart of what our round one grantee, Fresno, gives you an idea of the type of strategies they pursue. That's the 7 circles that you see on the top line, and the subsequent related projects, as well as some leverage projects. Next slide, please. With that, let's quickly cover a couple of planning grants and what planning grants are about. Next slide. So as you can see, this flowchart is much simpler with respect to how the planning grant works. The objective of this is to provide meaningful standalone planning activities while also preparing organizations to pursue further state funding opportunities, whether or not it's the TCC implementation grant. They are up to $300,000 each, and they support planning activities in disadvantaged communities. Next slide. So these are a few examples of eligible projects for the planning grant. So the symbol on the left represents capacity building among staff and departments, as well as among external stakeholders. The second icon that you see in the middle represents community engagement that results in innovative and meaningful programs and practices. And the third icon you see on the far right is on evaluation, updating, and streamlining various policies and codes enforced by the planning department. So that's all we have to say about the planning grant. Oh, next slide, please. So we would just like to touch very quickly upon the pilot project development grants. This is something that will be new for round 5. So next slide. So these are the overview details. It's up to $7 million for future TCC funding opportunities, which advance previous community planning, further transformative elements, and ensure that there's consistency with state planning priorities. Next slide, please. Here are some examples of eligible project activities. You see that within the different shapes that we would like to encourage applications with long-term operations, community engagement, feasibility studies, maintenance plans, local staff development. But that list is not limited to those 5 items. There are some additional activities. So you could find the full description in, you could find the full description in the round 5 draft guidelines that is found on the SGC website, and we will provide you all with a link with that later. And so with that, I'd like to hand it off to Jess.
Great, thank you so much. Before I start, I just want to check in and see if we had any questions. Yes, feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. I'll just leave a little bit of time for that.
Looks like we do have one question in the chat related to the TA deadline today.
Yes, Jerry or Bo, whoever wants to take this on. The question is, there was a TA application due today. What does that enable, and can that be shared between various partners in a potential application?
Yeah, I can take this a little bit. So the application TA, so all applicants that are applying for implementation TA are eligible to receive application TA. As far as folks interested in applying in a disadvantaged unincorporated community or a tribal community, you also have access to application TA, but that's the clear delineation. If you're applying for a planning grant as well. So I think that's the new expanded piece. Again, if you're an implementation grantee, you have access to application TA support. And I think we have some application TA folks on this call. who you can connect with. It's the Estelano Advisors team. And also, again, if you're from a disadvantaged unincorporated community or a tribal community, we expanded to give application TA for planning grant applications.
Great, thank you, Jerry. And then we have a couple other questions. I'll just take these 2 questions and we'll move on. And then we have more time at the end for more questions. So what are the funding ranges for the pilot project development grants? So I can take that one. They are up to 7 million. And are the pilot project development grants a part of the planning or implementation, or are they a third type? They are a third type, right? Jerry and Bo, would you like to add anything to those? Oh, great. It's in the chat. Yeah, it is a third type, and Bo put the guidelines in the chat as well. Great. Thanks so much. So hi, everyone. Yes, my name is Jess. I'm a program associate for TCC. I just started in November, so nice to see you all. Thanks so much for coming. So these next few slides, we're going to go over a few proposed changes to the Round 5 guidelines, and then later do breakout sessions to discuss other changes and solicit feedback. TCC is always striving to be better with each round. So again, as we mentioned in the beginning, we're really hoping to get your feedback during this session. And then you can also email it to us at tcc@sgc.ca.gov, which is also linked at the end of this presentation. So next slide, please. So first, we will be talking about the Disadvantaged Unincorporated Community Investment Framework. So DUC, yes, that stands for Disadvantaged Unincorporated Communities. The round 4 guidelines included an expansion of program accessibility and utility for DUCs, including an expansion of project area eligibility and technical assistance set aside. The round 5 guidelines also builds upon this. So first, we're offering project development pilot grant to help bridge funding and support for communities who have those pre-development costs. We're also including more flexibility on the 5 square mile project area requirement to accommodate the development patterns in rural DUCs. And then we're also allowing construction on prime agricultural land for unincorporated areas and areas with federally recognized tribal boundaries. And then we're also including the upgrading wells, which ties into our project strategy number 5 of water efficiency. And we also have a document that outlines all of the proposed policy changes. So you can also check that out on our guidelines page. And then next slide, please. We have also made some changes to increase accessibility for the California Native American Tribes section and their applications. So we are including increased flexibility on project requirements, and this includes the option to request modifications on a case-by-case basis. This includes public agency resolution, collaborative stakeholder structure, and project area, to name a few. We are also offering the usage of alternative materials to protect data sovereignty, and then finally modified indirect cost rates and displacement avoidance plan requirements, and the full details can also be found in the guidelines. Next slide, please. We are making changes to project area eligibility, and this is specifically for rural applicants. This includes expanding the project area cap to 10 square miles instead of the original 5, and then also replacing the density threshold requirement for DUCs by using locally relevant data found through CalEnviroscreen, the California Hearts Account Index, and parcel cluster layers. Next slide, please. And we talked about this a little bit, but now TCC has a product development pilot grant that will help address the funding gap between planning and implementation grants. And the draft guidelines propose awards of up to $7 million each to fund project development activities. And this includes pre-development costs, basic environmental infrastructure, and capacity building. And the full list is on the slide here. And we're especially hoping to get feedback on how to make this pilot grant framework meaningful and responsive, especially for communities facing those barriers to implementation. So I'm going to leave it on this slide just a little bit longer, just so you can see all the eligible activities. Great. And then Jerry, next slide, please. And then we are also prioritizing SB 1000, environmental justice and local land use planning. So this means that we will be providing additional scoring points to applicants from jurisdictions with strong environmental justice policies as outlined in their general plan. We are specifically asking for feedback on an effective way to structure this incentive to achieve the intended impact of long-term goals and policies at the local level. So yes, we're hoping that including this will incentivize folks to include those environmental justice policies in the general plan. And then before we move on to the other strategies, I just wanted to pause here to see if anyone had any immediate feedback or any questions. I understand that, we definitely need time to digest all this information. So if you don't have feedback right now, that is definitely okay. But I just want to pause for questions, comments, and other feedback. And then Jerry, Bo, Jennifer, and Brendan, if there's anything you else want to add as well.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. And again, these are all proposed, right? The ones, the 4 or 5 slides we just spoke to, and certainly requesting some feedback and some input from you all to see how we can make these further provide impacts in the communities that we're working in. Yeah, these are all draft mode, and again, just soliciting that feedback from folks.
Thank you. And then Jay, there is one question. So are you able to communicate this incentive around strong EJ elements to cities as they update their elements?
Yeah, well, this is the idea, and it's just a thought cloud right now, so it's not necessarily in the guidelines, but the general thought and why we're posing it to you, and this is good feedback here, around if a city or an agency has an EJ element developed or EJ policies within their general plan, the potential of additional scoring points or incentivizing folks to have those as part of the application process. Seeing here that this could have an impact on rural communities that have not updated a general plan, and that's the feedback that we're soliciting today. So seeing that as a potential negative to this. So did that answer your question, Haley?
Yeah, I would also invite either Haley or Maria to come off of mute and just expand a little bit on this feedback to make sure that we get this down in our notes and that we could take this back to the team to discuss it further.
Sure. I was just wondering how cities will know, if cities will be able to know that there's this incentive, that there's another reason for them to have a strong EJ element. If they've already upped, like it will work as an incentive if the city doesn't know that this is the possible benefit of having a strong EJ element. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I understand that, and now I understand the able to communicate this and how to communicate that. That's a good point. I think how we do the outreach on this, and this is the first time we're actually bringing this out and letting folks discuss, but certainly this would be one of the things that we'd have to focus on, and how we're communicating this with cities. Thanks for that feedback. Is there a link for the state of? Yes, I can pull that up in a second. It's on OPR's website, I believe. The Office of Planning and Research. I can pull that up, Melanie, and I can get it in there in a sec.
Great, and I'd love to invite any other folks that have feedback or questions. Or if everyone feels ready, I'd love to see a thumbs up and we can continue on as well. Just want to get temp check of the room. So if you feel ready to move on, feel free to use the reactions button and put a thumbs up. Great, seeing a few thumbs up. Great. So yes, feel free to always include any questions in the chat or email them to us later. So now we'll be discussing other proposed changes by strategy, and we'll be doing 3 different breakout sessions at 10 minutes each to discuss applicant requirements, policy priorities, and then projects and strategies. And then we're going to break out into 3 different rooms and provide feedback in small groups for 10 minutes and then rejoin and move on to the next session. And those instructions, when I'm saying them out loud, are a little bit confusing, but I think, you know, by actually doing it, we'll all understand more. And we're also going to be using a Jamboard to keep track of the feedback and the discussion. So Jerry, if you want to screen share, and then either if you want to give an example of how the Jamboard works, or yeah.
Perfect. I can do that. Thank you.
Yes, and then we will, just so that we can avoid all the traffic on the Jamboard, I'll share the link after Jerry goes over this example.
Great. Thanks. Okay, so we're going to try this Jamboard to get some feedback. There are some other items. The ones that just shared are really, we like to say, the meatier portions of the updates. These others we put into buckets. They are around application requirements, policy priorities for TCC, and then the last bucket we have is around projects and strategies. The way we're going to make this work, hopefully, is we will break us out into 3 rooms. I can't see how many folks are on this call, but hopefully that breaks down to about 20 folks per room. So it'll invite some more participation, we hope. The general idea is that we will all go into session 1 into 3 groups and provide input and feedback for 10 minutes. Then we'll come back, and then we'll all jump into session 2. We'll talk about policy priorities for 10 minutes, and then we'll as the Zoom connoisseur, you won't have to do anything except for just jump back and forth between rooms, but Jess will take care of that. The last one we will provide feedback on our projects and strategies. And how this will work is like so. So we'll be able to move. Oh, the other thing is that we color coded. So the first session will be in green. The second session will be here in blue post-its, and then the orange post-its are the last session. So what we'll do is we'll break into that first session, and folks will have, with the link, you'll have access to this menu bar. For those that aren't familiar with Jamboard, you'll be able to create a post-it note, and then we'll just use green for this one. You save it, and then you should be able to write your comments on here. And we're encouraging folks to leave comments wherever they feel necessary or what they have some input on, and just drop these on. So for this applicant eligibility, for example, the proposed change is to enable corporate entities, not community-based organizations, to serve as lead applicants in round 5, as long as they have justification if no alternative community-based organizations are available. If this is something you feel very strongly about, if you have a comment, please fill this in and just leave this little sticky note around here. The other example here is we have another proposal for public agency support. So for this, the proposal is for round 5 is that California Native American tribes may submit a letter from a member of the tribal council at the time of application. And then this resolution will still be required afterwards, after any awards are made, or before any awards are made. I'm sorry. Same thing, just drop a note here. So we have a few of these to go through. Again, we'll break into groups and do that. We'll all be working out of this document, so feel free to, if you're an independent learner, like many of us are, feel free to just jot these, and these are pretty straightforward, and we hope they're clear enough to provide some, you have to just read through these. They should be pretty clear and straightforward. Regardless, we will have staff in all of the rooms to help explain if there are questions, and to help clarify if there are some that need further clarification. I hope that made sense. Like Jess said, I think once we go through the first one, I think it'll make a lot more sense.
Yes, thanks so much for those instructions, Jerry. So yeah, before I open up the breakout rooms, I do want to say that if you need Spanish interpretation, please stay in this main room. And then I am having it set that you all can choose which room to choose. However, I ask that you try to make it an even number in each room. And then Jerry and I will be in this main room. So of course, if you ever have any questions, you can ask the staff or come to the main room.
Cool, and it's 1:40, looking at the time check. So yeah, if we do about 10 minutes per, that gives us 30. And then come back afterwards and do a large group share for folks that would like to open up the mic and provide some feedback on things that you saw.
And the breakout rooms are now open, so feel free to jump in. And then of course, if you all need any help, looks like some folks are already jumping in, but if you need help doing that, please let us know. Just at the very bottom of your panel, there's breakout rooms. And then you can choose which room to go into. And then again, if you need Spanish interpretation, please stay in this main room. So it looks like people are slowly migrating, which is great.
Awesome.
Then Jerry, should I continue recording or go ahead and stop the recording?
I think we can stop this. Yeah, we can stop recording this. Because it might be in Spanish.